Everyone, my name is Sophia Mashasha. Welcome to Coffee with Karthik on Achieving Agile Transformation. Karthik Srinivasan is a recognized thought leader and industry expert with demonstrated experience in several federal agencies. He authored the I Adapt Agile Practices and the Agile Maturity Model Assessments for WBB, as well as manages the solutions development and innovation of emerging IT markets in cybersecurity, mobile computing, cloud computing, big data, and agile practices. He has managed several agile system releases during his tenure at the private sector, as well as leading agile transformation support for DHS, USCIS, and DHS ICE in their IT transformation and infrastructure modernization efforts. During the session, your microphone will be muted. Please type in all questions in the comment section, and we will answer them at the end. Following the webinar, an email will be sent to you with a voucher for your coffee card. Welcome, Karthik.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful webinar on Wednesday morning for achieving agile transformation in the federal agencies. In today's agenda, over the next 45 minutes, we're going to be giving an overview of our I Adapt Agile Transformation overview, specifically surrounding how we can help achieve agile transformation. What are some of the factors that you need to consider when you need to transition yourself into an agile environment? How can you visualize your requirements? How do you need to make sure that you're focusing on transitioning your workforce as you mature through your systems development processes? And agile is not just about your systems engineering and systems development lifecycle. It also focuses on the people and the processes and the organizational aspects. So we'll be covering all of that today. Hopefully at the end of this webinar, you will get a very good insight into how you can enable and be champions for your agencies in transitioning and transforming into an agile way. What are the typical client business issues that you foresee in today's environment? You're all faced with sequestration, budget cuts, and typical issues in meeting your cost, schedule, and performance of your complex IT system deliveries. And a lot of these agencies have its own flavor of systems development lifecycle or systems engineering lifecycle, and it all starts with acquisition. If you don't have those T's and C's in your acquisition processes, in your procurement processes, and an effective contracting mechanism, your requirements to delivery and operations, and be it the disposal or continuous operations and maintenance of those systems becomes a tedious process. Clients definitely want to transform and transition to an agile methodology. They want to be agile in terms of the technology that they are implementing. They want to be agile in terms of the processes that support that technology implementation. And they also want the organization to be agile and be able to respond quickly to the changing business needs. And the keyword there again is changing business needs. Your business needs, as you start to develop your high-level capabilities and requirements, constantly change over the course of the life cycle of the program or the project. And if you don't adapt to those changes, you end up with issues such as program being behind schedule significantly, stuck in that vicious loop of requirements lifecycle, and you also have significant cost overruns due to voluminous requirements and not being able to meet your schedules on your program releases. So there is a constant need for customers to look into ways, hey, my business stakeholders want capabilities delivered yesterday. They want it done more frequently than ever before. How do I implement something that works in a building block way, implements it in an incremental fashion, and the build process, in terms of deploying these systems, be it in the DoD environments for mission critical weapon systems that are supported by heavy intensive IT, software, or even the civilian sectors where we are supporting, several agencies in transportation, or for that matter, managing Veterans Benefits Administration, or implementing systems that take care of Department of Agriculture's needs, for that matter. All of them currently follow a very top-down, structured, step-by-step process. And they all need to start with acquisition, an agile acquisition process that helps speed up. Who does not want today an environment that provides them the pace, an engine that delivers faster system capabilities, month after month, 3 months, every quarter, or for that matter, every 6 months, depending on the complexity of the systems. Your non-agile state, of a client, impedes the system releases, and you're not responsive to your businesses. And you have big upfront requirements and design that is preventing you from moving further into development processes. And you always need voluminous requirements documentation. All of us, if you go back, step back, look into your emails, you probably have, if you sort it by the amount of attachments that you have received, on your emails, you will see that 9 out of 10 of those emails relate to requirements or changes to requirements. You are dealing with documentation and supporting documentation to those requirements constantly over a period of time. Change control boards, change requests, change management are just huge issues. You're trying to implement governance processes surrounding that instead of trying to see, hey, how I can dynamically and rapidly and rigidly apply those changes to these requirements within the process, as part of the process in an agile way. And you're constantly having to go through those gate reviews with the higher-ups or with your acquisition folks, or to justify the amount that you have spent, or to request, I need more money to proceed further. What are the immediate needs of the customers? They definitely want to change how it's currently being done. When they say, hey, I want the way it's currently being done to be changed, they want it changed for good, and they want their people to be able to adapt to it very easily. And at the same time, they don't want to stop everything that they're currently doing to move into an agile way. While we are doing what needs to be done for business, all the customers have their day-to-day tactical issues and systems and program releases currently going on. While they are trying to attack the day-to-day problems, they want those agencies, those people, those processes, those systems, and those existing methodologies to be transitioned and transformed into an agile fashion, into an agile environment. And your priorities and pressure to meet your business goals, your business stakeholders, always take the first precedence. What are some of the factors that WBB's Agile Transformation approach bring to the table? We will help define the business goals and objectives through an I-Adapt Agile Transformation that we have seen achieve for our clients, and we will continue to assist some of our future clients. We want to help map and evaluate your current level. Some of the agencies probably will say, hey, I am non-agile. I am very new to this agile environment, but I definitely want to adapt to it. Or some of the agencies are going to come back and say, I've tried it in the past. It doesn't just seem to work, a whole lot, or maybe I just don't understand it completely. So for those agencies, we have an agile maturity model. It is not as complex as a capability maturity model, a CMMI, or for that matter, an ISO 9001. It's 5 different stages. You mature it through 9 different dimensions, and those dimensions include communication, business responsiveness, risk, program management practices, how much agile leadership teams are engaged, and so on. And we'll talk about it in a minute. And we'll help define a roadmap to the clients to progress across that maturity model to desired state. That will help achieve your client objectives. And I mentioned WBB. I lead the solutions development and in the innovation team, for WBB. WBB has been in the industry for about 30 years, supporting customers within the DoD space as well as within Homeland Security, Veterans Administration, OPM, and several civilian agencies to name, in requirements, in program management, in lean quality management practices, to logistics and sustainment support, and in major IT transformation efforts. We support some of the most critical DHS level 1 and level 2 investments, and level 1 and level 2 investments within Homeland Security are investments in the range of 5 to 25 to $50 billion of investments. We support some of those major programs in transforming agencies. When I say agencies, the entire agency, a component agency for its IT practices, for its business processes, the complete re-engineering. And we achieve that, and we are supporting that, as we speak, in transitioning and transforming those agencies in Agile practices and transitioning them to an Agile environment. What is our Agile methodology? Agile is a very umbrella term. If you look into it from an Agile practice, it encompasses 6 different practices within the Agile umbrella. You can talk about pair programming, you can talk about Kanban, you can talk about extreme programming, you can talk about sprint and scrum methodologies and all of that. But the most underlying and core values surrounding WBP's implementation of an Agile methodology is you want to accelerate delivery. You want to get a system release out faster, and you want to bring visibility. It's all about that shared first initiative from the Federal CIO Council. It's all about transparency of government initiatives. And every agency has a strategy. Clients have goals, they have funding, which is a constraint that they need to work towards, and they have a vision, and some of them have mission critical needs. You translate that strategy into achievable incremental releases through strong estimation, a very clear release plan, and what we call it as a backlog. Create that release and product backlog of the most critical items that you want to achieve and prioritize those. And then work within a systems engineering lifecycle framework. For example, Immigration and Customs Enforcement within Homeland Security has something called as Systems Lifecycle Management, SLM. DHS, has something called as SELC. FAA has its own acquisition lifecycle processes. Department of Defense implements it through the JSIT's acquisition management processes. Each one has and calls it their own, flavor. Department of Labor has it as Systems Development Lifecycle. Very simple. You take that and you work within that to implement a release management plan and a release strategy that defines what you want to accomplish within each of those releases, and it is time boxed. And then you translate that into iterations and have a plan to review it, and a retrospective aspect to look back what went right and what did not work, what got carried away, to continuously improve. And it's nothing but a typical Six Sigma, define, measure, analyze, improvement, control kind of an approach within that iteration that happens to improve and implement a continuous improvement and delivery mechanism surrounding that. And then it does not have weekly stand-ups. What it has is a 5 to 10 minute daily stand-ups and acceptance, and on a continuous basis you want to implement test-driven developments, builds, refactor to be able to implement the metrics and the estimates correctly, and to get your releases out within the quarterly or the 2-month cycles that you want to get it out. You want to define the business goals and objectives and map it using our Agile maturity model, and then define a roadmap that can help take you to the desired state. What is IADAPT? I keep telling IADAPT. IADAPT stands for Iterative Agile Development Approach for Process Improvement and Transformation. And the key here is you're transforming, and it is an approach, it is a methodology that is going to guarantee you a minimum of 30% on savings in time and proportionate, in terms of the cost by reducing your release cycle times. And what I mean by release here is releasing capabilities, releasing fully functionable capabilities out to the field, out to your users. It could be for a weapons development program, it could be for an IT system release, it could be for a major upgrade that you're currently carrying out. Agile methodologies are also known to be applied not just on fresh development, but also on operations and maintenance activities, as well as major infrastructure engineering efforts. It's a very seamless transition and tailoring of your traditional development approach. We get used to our traditional way of doing things because we've been doing it for a longer amount of time, and we don't just realize how beneficial it is to think different, act different, and be able to accommodate changes as they arise. An Agile and our adapt approach is all about that model-based systems engineering approach to be able to implement it in a repeatable way. And it does include all the other organizational methodologies and supporting processes, to include managing your investments, managing your risks, managing your security aspects. It is business process transformation. You are engineering your business processes as you speak, and you're maturing your organizational levels. It does encompass all the other maturity aspects of COBIT from an IT governance perspective. It does include components of ITIL from an IT infrastructure perspective, and it does include methods from your ISO and CMMI aspects. So it does look at it from an organizational maturity level on a whole. What are some of the functional areas that adapt Agile methodology can apply? It starts, like I said, with the early acquisition lifecycle processes. It deals with organizational change. We're talking about change management of your processes, people, organization, technology, acquisition, systems engineering stages and processes, as well as your IT investment practices. It implies significantly and impacts significantly on how you define, manage, and govern requirements with your business stakeholders. It engages your business stakeholders not just from a requirements perspective, but from being process and product owners and from being part of the Scrum teams. It manages risks through way of let risks arise, and I will address it as it arises. Of course, proactive aspects of risk management, risk mitigation, and risk planning are incorporated, from a release planning perspective. Yet, when unforeseen risks come, instead of trying to, pass those risks and handle those risks, mitigate the risks. It incorporates the risks. From a capital planning and investment control perspective, it justifies the investments as investments are burnt in weeks and in days, rather than waiting for months to justify those investments. From an information assurance perspective, it not only looks at the process from a system engineering as a lifecycle perspective, but it also looks into the flow of information through the lifecycle processes. So it ensures and assures the information and guarantees the value of investment in terms of system development in those sprint cycles by showing the results as working prototypes, as working functionality, and it assures that than waiting for months for your gate reviews. In infrastructure engineering, in major infrastructure engineering activities, it lays the foundation through a sprint zero cycle to lay that foundational infrastructure environment, a solid foundation, before you start building systems on top of it. By doing that way, you are ensuring that your environments are certified, your test environments are in place prior to actually starting development activities. And from a testing and evaluation perspective, testing, it's test-driven development. Testing is incorporated into the requirements and development and design, activities. Again, requirements, development, and design are not separate stages here. They are all part of what I call it as sprint cycles. Testing and evaluation and the required stakeholders are part of those life cycles before it moves into a fully functional demo towards the end of those sprint cycles. Typical system engineering life cycle, as you can see it in the screen, would go through your engineering, planning, requirements, design, development, integration, test, and in all the O&M activities. Whereas in an adapt Agile methodology, if you were to take that 1 year cycle and then break it down into like 4 months, for a typical effort, you're looking at, from a solutions engineering perspective, define the release strategy, define your architectures upfront and plain, and for each of those releases, you're going to define that timeline. It's going to be time boxed, defining those releases, and for each of those releases, you're going to justify the return on investment and the benefits that the business stakeholders are going to get through a benefits realization plan. Hey, I'm going to have 4 releases, each release happening over 4 months. But at the same time, I want to make sure that for each of those 4 releases, I'm going to tell you what benefits you're going to gain out of it. And these benefits are tangible benefits to the business stakeholders. For example, a business stakeholder trying to process cargo systems, at the borders for Customs and Border Protection program is going to look at it and say, how many of those cargoes, if I'm getting 10 million cargoes every year in various ports, how many of those cargoes can you automate in terms of approving so that my border patrol agents or my customs agents do not need to open up and inspect those cargoes. By automating those cargoes that come at the ports as much as possible, you're reducing the amount of time, the manpower, and the cost associated with doing that, and also improving the cycle time in getting those cargoes out faster. I'm just throwing it as an example. So what ends up happening is, for a release, the first release, say if it's release 1, we're going to get an improvement of 10%, which means 1 million of those cargoes are now going to go through an automated approval process. So you don't necessarily need to work only on remaining 9 million cargoes for inspection. And in the release 2, you're going to significantly improve on top of those capabilities and say, I'm going to add another 15% of automation to it. Effectively, now you're adding another 1.5 million cargoes to be automated. So over an 8-month cycle, you've accomplished 2.5 million cargoes to be automated, and you didn't wait 8 months to make that release. What you did is, I can get 1 million cargoes effectively processed within the first 4 months of the release. So you made that happen in 4 months without waiting for 8 months for the complete functionality. And that's what is defining those benefits upfront. Planning and requirements, as I call it as sprint 0, is where your tailoring happens. You're creating your master schedules. You're also defining your critical paths and your iterations. And more importantly, you're planning your environments and setting it up. And environments here could be typical systems engineering test environments and development environments, and also having a corresponding test and evaluation plan. And when you do the requirements, you're also defining in sprint 0 the prototypes of how you want it to be seen and shown. If it is publicly funded investments wherein you need to go through appropriated funds, what ends up happening is, even before you start your sprint life cycles, your iterative design, development, and test approaches, you're defining those prototypes. I actually have some screenshots of prototypes that can be developed in a matter of hours. You could take that and then pass it all the way up to the founders or to your acquisition program and directorates and show them, this is what we're going to develop. This is how it's going to look like. And you can even post it if you need public comments, from an OMB perspective. You could post it to get public comments back and get their approval. What ends up happening is, this emphasizes and ensures an early business stakeholder engagement and approval in the process. Sprint 0 is extremely critical for 2 aspects, as you can see in here. One is getting your environments set up, procured, set up, and available upfront. And the second one is finding those iterations and being able to visualize and get those prototypes and screen demos done way upfront and getting that early business stakeholder engagement done. And then it goes through what I call it as sprint development life cycles. And sprint development life cycles, it starts with sprint planning, sprint development, testing, demo, and as you can see, your functional quality testings and user acceptance testings are part of it. Even though I mentioned FQT and UAT there, it's part of sprint testing. They are not separate activities, they are part of the sprint activities. In your iterative design, development, and test, the teams, the Scrum teams, are composed of your cross-functional representatives, including your Scrum Masters, your product owners, your business stakeholders, your requirements gurus, the SMEs from the field. It includes the testing guys, the independent testing guys, the operational testing guys, to just name a few. And even technical engineers and infrastructure guys, security guys. very importantly, because you want to make sure that as you develop, it is compliant with those FISMA needs, it is compliant with those cybersecurity needs. And once it all goes, then you're building through those sprint development life cycles, and at the end of that sprint end, whichever is that last sprint, you're doing the testing and integration, wherein you're just testing for the integrated functions, and then you're pretty much ready to like deployed, and then the next release starts happening. And this is what I meant by visualizing those requirements. What ends up happening is all your agile values and principles are translated in a pre-visualized way, wherein the users come into a joint application modeling session, demonstrate what they want, and the requirements are decomposed in an agile Scrum environment from a pre-visualized mode to release planning, and then in that red zone, you're actually seeing the demos. You can actually create working prototypes of those demos. If you look into the next screen, this is a requirements visualization screen that we put together for somebody who wants to immigrate into the United States, and they want to do an I-90 form, a form that they fill out. And these are not screenshots from the actual USCIS website, but these are screens that were developed in a matter of like 4 hours as users were depicting their requirements. Hey, I want a launch page, and from the launch page, I want the user to be able to apply for a green card, their permanent residentship, and then it should allow them to be able to download or fill the form online, and then give them the details surrounding that. So along with the download, it goes from part 1, part 2, part 3, and all the way through those parts as the user can fill out, and then the user has the option to like print it or save and exit. And this is a very different application of visualizing the requirements. Federal Aviation Administration wants to develop the most eco-friendly flight paths, and they gather information about flights, fuel performance, and their routes from various FAA towers, set up all throughout the nation. And those routes, what they call it as the T routes and the Q routes, they are all captured through the satellite-based navigation systems, and it's part of their next generation technology to capture and be able to come with eco-friendly routes. And as you add or remove towers, this screen can become working prototype for users as requirements start feeding. You want to change the route of flights coming in from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., through flight tower B instead of flight tower A. The data can be fed in, and the impact can be analyzed real time. And this is the power of like being able to visualize your requirements. So requirements are not done traditionally through requirements, traceability matrix, and functional and system requirements. Requirements are done on the fly, visualized here. So this is a very key differentiator that we have as part of our overall iAdapt approach. I want to throw in a couple of case studies. This is for the transformation effort for our USCIS, wherein WBP team implemented master schedules, and within the first year, we were able to transition the agency and implement agile schedule lists and get the program out of a GAO watch list. And we automated a lot of the schedule statuses and the reporting cycle time by 40%, transitioning from a typical systems development lifecycle into sprints and user stories, and being able to capture it through that process. Another example is for, again, agency transformation for ICE, wherein they were struck with requirements, as they were trying to implement, as they detain people, the immigration official, as they try to detain a lot of the folks across the borders, they want to be able to assess and classify the risk the people that they're detaining. Hey, am I detaining a high-end, terrorist here, or am I detaining somebody, who's just trying to, migrate illegally to work, within the U.S. So based on the data that they gather, the detaining officers were able to enter that information through their mobile devices, and that data would check against the FBI and all the law enforcement agencies and provide them input back in terms of whether this person should be granted a bond or whether this person should be detained. So the risk classification assessment program was one of the first programs to go through an agile transition effort within ICE, and we assisted them not only on that, but also surrounding the infrastructure that was needed to get that agile environment out. What are some of the focus areas, when you want to go through an agile environment? And from an application lifecycle standpoint, yes, you want to have an agile planning and acquisition process. You want to have release and sprint planning in place. You want to be able to better manage your backlogs. User stories and epics need to be managed. And extremely important is your strategy, how you're going to execute the testing, how you're going to conduct performance testing, and manage the defects as it arises. Governance is very key. This is not like establishing those standard governance boards, in a traditional environment, and they do just the checks and balances. Whereas here, the governance expands its role into governance of test environments, governance of all the shared services. Governance defines key performance indicators for all of the focus areas, and governance also deals with reporting based on those key performance areas. And I already mentioned it is not just surrounding applications and systems and processes, but it also deals with a lot of the people factors, the human aspects, workforce transformation aspects. Our Agile maturity model is focused on Agile teams. We assist in making sure that they are self-organized, empowered, and an element of trust exists within the teams. And it all starts top-down with the leadership. How do we coach, mentor, and work and partner with that leadership to be able to adapt to change and establishing team-centric culture and values? And a lot of times it also means complete reorganization and realignment of the workforce to work in the team-centric environment. Agile does have some components of project management because you are doing planning, you are doing estimation, you are trading off on some of the documentation and applying relative estimating and prioritization. And extremely important is the communication, the collaboration aspect. How do we make sure that the teams comprising of product owners and managers have the ability to make the decisions on whatever they want within those governance life cycles? That's very, very important. And Agile will not be truly beneficial if you're not mapping your business value to the requirements. For every single requirement that you're working on, you want to look into what is the business value that it is going to drive, how important it is, how high in the priority list does this requirement need to be? Should it be done in release 1 or should it be pushed to release 2? Is this a must-have, nice to have, or is this something that they can live without? You got to constantly be asking that question to explain the business value surrounding that, and managing the risks by delivering it incrementally than trying to do it all at once. Very important. Our assessment, again, is multiple dimensions. And when we say, and when we use the word agile terms and methodologies here, they are industry driven. They are very specific and they mean something in value and delivery. When we say we are going to emphasize on agile communication and rings of decision making, we're going to measure that through key performance indicators and see to what extent has this agile communication improved in terms of the value and delivery for the current and the future releases. And again, you got to be constantly asking that question, is it worth making that investment here, or what is the return of making more change? You got to constantly be asking that question. A typical rollout in terms of the life cycle always starts with kickoff, working with customers, getting the leadership buy-in, and then rolling it out for a project, pilot project, and then implementing it, showing the business value in a pilot project, and then taking that out for all the other projects and systems within that agency. A first roadmap in any of your agile transformation needs will always start with identifying where you want to be. What are your goals? What are your constraints? And then assessing your current state of agile across that 9 dimensions for the ideal target state, and then developing a roadmap and then being able to execute that. Our assessment model has, like I said, 5 stages. You are in a level 0, which means you don't apply any of the agile methodologies. Some hero comes, runs the program, makes it a success. You don't have any tools, you don't have any common architecture. Or you want to go into a level 1 wherein, hey, I went for some certified Scrum Master training for 2 days. I understand what poker planning and all those concepts are. I'm going to come be the agile guru and implement it in my own ad hoc way. But I am not going to be, implementing any of those manual and automated, testing pieces. I'm going to just do a little bit of that here and there. And there is no cross collaboration. There is no communication, happening here. I don't have any sprint teams and all of that. I'm going to just do it with limited knowledge. Or you want to be a practitioner. A lot of organizations with the federal agencies are probably in that level 1 stage, trying to be agile, initiated, but wanting to be in the level 2 and the level 3 areas. And we assist agencies, specifically from that level 2 and how you can get as close as possible to level 3 and in between level 3 and level 4. Level 4 organizations, some of the industry recognized organizations are like the Nokias, the Apples, the Salesforce. Those are some of the organizations that have matured. It has taken them years to get to a level 4 stage. Our goal with a lot of the agencies that we are currently working on is to take them from the current level 1 agile initiated to a level 2 within a 6-9 month period, and then from level 2, another year to like take anywhere between level 3 and level 4. And the 9 different areas in terms of how an assessment would work, there's like on shared responsibilities, how you're currently doing builds, how you're doing requirements, testing, how responsive are you to your business needs, what are you assuring from an information perspective, from a quality perspective, are you handling your programs in the most simple way possible, are you trying to complicate it? Simplicity is key, and Apple is a classic example of how they achieved that maturity level through simplicity and focusing on simplicity. Configuration management, tools, systems, practices surrounding managing your configurations, and all the CI items. Communication and collaboration and governance are some of the factors that we focus on our assessments. This is an example in terms of what defines from a build perspective, where you are in the maturity levels. It is another example in terms of where you would be from a communication perspective. A lot of the agencies want to be at an enterprise collaboration level, level 4. Business participation is non-invasive to the team, but if you look into it, a lot of them are regular meetings. Hey, I'm having this weekly meeting that is really structured to facilitate collaboration. A lot of CIOs, CTOs, CISOs are trying to, or directors and ACSs are trying to do that. I think that regular meetings, facilitating that is going to improve collaboration. But you want to also focus on those level 2s. Tools, what are those tools that facilitate active and passive communications? How do I ensure pairing across those team roles? And how do I get to an enterprise collaboration level? Some of the functional areas where we can apply is, again, acquisition lifecycle processes, definitely on systems engineering stages, organizational change management, and infrastructure engineering requirements, and typical systems development lifecycles, and IT systems development initiatives. This is an example in terms of how Agile transformation works within the Department of Defense 5000 and the JSIT's processes. what is it that you could do? We've been talking for about 40 minutes surrounding achieving agile transformation in your agency. What is it that you, as key stakeholders within your agencies, as champions within these agencies, can take back from this, webinar and 40 minutes of time that you've spent? Go back, identify the pain points within your agency, within its programs, within the projects. I'm pretty sure you're going to look into areas where you have programs that are behind schedule, that are having cost overruns, that you've been doing the same way for a long time, that you've never bothered to go back, relook at the business processes, the life cycle processes, the gate reviews, the volumes, documentation that you need to do, the typical way of handling requirements through requirements documentation and requirements traceability matrices. How is it that you could be a game changer surrounding that? Get in touch with WBP. We could come, have more discussions with you surrounding your current state, and then, help you develop a roadmap, in achieving 30 to 50%, cost savings and schedule improvement. We can not only assist on the program and getting that program back in a good shape, but we can also, assist in transitioning your workforce, surrounding that. With that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably open up for questions. If any of you have questions on the GoToMeeting, you would see the chat and the questions surrounding that. You could use either the chat or the questions to type your questions, and I'll be more than glad to respond back for those questions, in the next 10, 15, 20 minutes to as much as I can. And for the rest of the questions, what I'll do is I will reach back. Somebody at WBB will also reach back to you offline. So I'm going to pass it back to Sophia. I received one of the questions here in terms of requirements. In terms of requirements, I look into it here. Somebody is asking, hey, how do you visualize your requirements? I mean, I see the very interesting screens on the I-90 as well as the FAA, but how does that really work in terms of gathering the requirements? Very good question. In terms of visualizing the requirements, what ends up happening is we've had agencies wherein they went through the typical requirements documentation process. A lot of times, in most of the programs that we have, worked with, we have gotten into a stage wherein they've been working on requirements for 9 months, 12 months, more than a year, and then they're still trying to get that requirements gate review passed. A lot of agencies have that issue. That's because what they end up doing is, hey, this is going to be a 5-year program, and we're going to get requirements done in the first year. Second year, we're going to get, planning and some development done. Third year, we're going to get, design and some more development done. Get into testing on 4th year and 5th year. Beginning of 5th year, we're going to implement it. It's not that long of a process. In a sprint environment, it's 2 weeks to get the functionality out, max 3 weeks, depending on the complexity of the effort. From a requirements visualization perspective, what we have is we work with a solution partner and we implement something called a joint application modeling session. In a joint application modeling session, the guys, it comes back from the movie industries wherein the people are telling the requirements as they speak, and we use a requirements visualization tool that designs the screen, designs all the aspects of it, and then what ends up happening is, as the users, the business stakeholders in a room, they're locked with those visualization engineers and designers. As they define what they want, the visualization engineers are visualizing it and creating screens, and everyone's looking at the screen and they are seeing, wow, It's like what you see is what you feel. It's like that, like a busy week, but busy feel. Whatever I am feeling, whatever I am dictating as requirements comes up in the screen. Like it comes back from the movie production industries. So in this process, what ends up happening is the users are not only thrilled to see that, oh my God, my requirements are not just going into a Word document or an Excel file as an requirements traceability metrics, but in this case, I'm actually seeing those requirements shown to me live as it's been dictated. So what's happening is you're getting that user buy-in, and if the user doesn't like, user is now actively engaged in the process of like changing the requirements. It's an amazing process. You sit in like in 1 or 2 hour of those sessions, and requirements that can take months to be developed. You can see that initial version being done in hours, a matter of hours. Again, for the person who asked that question, you're more than welcome to reach back out to me, and I can show some of the most. There's another question here which talks about, do you see a need for a different kind of requirements process, one that is more agile in and of itself? The requirements visualization process that I talk about here is an agile process. The fundamental concept of agile and requirements as it deals with is 2 factors. The touch points in an agile approach as it pertains to defining, managing, and executing a requirements lies in 2 aspects. One, to be able to handle changes to the requirements, and the second aspect is reduce the amount of documentation surrounding those requirements, because in an environment where a system is being developed ground up, there is nothing that can be shown when the project is or the program is to begin. That is where visualizing those requirements lays that foundation, in your early sprint 0 and sprint 1 cycles to define that, underlying foundation where everybody can buy into it. What it also does is it allows you to get that cross-functional buy-in, not only from your business stakeholders, but from all the leadership surrounding that. And what it also does is it gives that positive vibe surrounding, hey, we have gotten this mocked up screens. All we need to do now is to be able to build functionality surrounding that. It assists the development teams and the design teams much more. It reduces the design life cycle significantly because you are designing the user interfaces, you are designing the screens in a mocked up prototype, as part of your requirements. Instead of like trying to document it and then trying to create screens. The screens, the business rules are embedded within that requirements. There's another question here in terms of, from an enterprise perspective, do you see a need for more emphasis on API development versus application, development? There is an excellent question in terms of APIs versus applications being developed. It depends. Again, it depends in terms of what you're trying to develop, what you're trying to deploy, and more importantly, how much of commonality it exists. I'll take a classic example. Agile will apply extremely well if in mobile development. The bring your own device strategies, the mobile strategies that are very hot in the market. APIs there will help a lot, because if you're trying to develop an app store for your agency, and if you develop APIs that allow several applications, several projects, several systems, several stakeholders from your agencies to use those APIs to develop the applications. Whereas if you're trying to develop a very specific application, for processing I-90s, this is what it is, and we're going to do that, then the very specific functionality is there is going to focus more on applications rather than APIs. Whereas within that same immigration example, there are 600 different forms that they use. A form that processes citizenship benefits, a form that processes immigration benefits, a form that allows a refugee to come in, a form that allows tourists to apply for visas. The commonality surrounding all of that could be developed as an API, making it much more easy, to do the building blocks on top of it. Are there any other questions? If you have more questions, could go ahead, type it in now. Again, this this webinar is scheduled, and the intent here is to provide some thoughts, some actions that you could work on in terms of, hey, my agency, my programs, my projects, my department, my branch is having issues, with sequestration and with budget cuts. I'm working on this small effort, but I still have, schedule issues, budget issues, or I'm working on this major transformation initiative, and I have problems, with managing the requirements, managing my development teams. Those are the ideal targets, those ideal, opportunities which require an agile transformation and an agile transition. Agile has proven to be extremely successful in the private sector, like I said, with Salesforce, with Nokia, with Apple, a lot of agencies, a lot of organizations. Within the federal agencies, we are tasting some significant success, within Homeland Security, and a lot of other agencies also are, migrating significantly towards this. So, if you are working in an agency and if you want to, try out Agile and work with WBB in transforming the agency and its programs, please reach out. I think you should be able to see my contact information out there on the screen. I'm going to turn now back to Sophia. Thank you. Hope you all have a wonderful webinar. Back to Sophia.
Thank you all for attending WBB's webinar on Achieving Agile Transformation. We hope you enjoyed the session. If you have additional questions, please reach out to Karthik through the information shown on the screen, or you can contact WBB through our website or any of our social networking mediums. You will be contacted shortly for your coffee gift card, and thank you and have a great day.